The Great Wall of China. Okay, we all have that picture in our heads, right? A huge, ancient dragon made of stone winding its way across these misty mountains. It's one of the most famous sights on the entire planet. But what if the story we all think we know is just scratching the surface of something way more complex and honestly, way more interesting?
What if I told you that the Great Wall, that single, unbroken wall you're picturing right now, is basically a myth? That the reality is something messier, something built in these wild bursts of activity and then just abandoned for centuries? A structure driven by a constantly changing idea of who was us and who was them. Yeah, that's the real story we're going to get into today.
You see, we tend to imagine the wall as this one single thing, but it's so much better to think of it as a process. It's not one wall. It's this enormous, sprawling network of walls and forts and trenches. They were built by tons of different dynasties for totally different reasons against a whole bunch of different enemies, not just the Mongols. This is a 13,000-mile-long story of shifting borders, intense paranoia, and just incredible human ambition.
So let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, way before the famous stone wall that we see in all the pictures. The whole idea of a great wall didn't just pop into some emperor's head. Nope, it actually grew out of chaos, a reaction to a really long period of conflict inside China. Before China was even a unified empire, back in what they call the Warring States period, it was just a bunch of rival kingdoms fighting it out. And states like Qi and Wei and Zhao, they built these massive earthen walls, not just to keep nomadic tribes out, but mainly to keep each other out. Isn't that wild? The very first walls were actually signs of division, not unity.
And the way it evolved from there is just fascinating. In 221 BC, you get China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, and he has this totally radical idea: let's connect all these old rival walls into one single unified defense against the northern raiders. And right there, that was the birth of the concept of a Great Wall. Then you have dynasties like the Han, who pushed it thousands of miles west to protect the super valuable Silk Road. And later, you've got the Northern Qi and the Sui, who threw massive resources at it. Mobilizing 1 million men at one point just to fix it up and add to it.
But this incredible ambition, it came at an absolutely staggering price: 400,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated number of people who died just during the Qin Dynasty's construction phase. A project on this scale was pretty much unimaginable in the ancient world.
And the brutal reality of that cost is captured in this one chilling detail.
Now, archaeologists don't find much hard evidence for this today, but the legend, the story that workers were buried right inside the wall, gave it its oldest, darkest nickname: the longest cemetery on Earth. It was a project built on an almost unbelievable amount of human suffering. So, after that first big construction boom, the wall's story gets even more complicated. For more than 1,000 years, it wasn't this constant project. Its importance went up and down, all depending on the confidence, the goals, and the fears of each new dynasty that came to power. Take the mighty Tang dynasty. They were so powerful, so confident in their army, that they preferred to go out and fight their enemies way out on the open plains. So for them, the wall, largely neglected. The Song dynasty kind of repurposed old sections as a border defense. And you gotta love the irony here, when the Mongols themselves, led by Kublai Khan, conquered all of China, the wall became completely irrelevant. Why would you need a wall when you rule the land on both sides of it?
Okay, this brings us to the Ming Dynasty. And this is where we get the Great Wall, the one we all recognize. This is when those old, simple dirt walls were totally transformed into the incredible stone and brick wonder of the world we know today. And this amazing achievement was born from a moment of complete and utter national disaster.
Can you imagine the national shock? It's 1449, the Ming army gets absolutely crushed by the Mongols, and the emperor himself is captured. This event, the Tumu Crisis, was so humiliating that it forced a complete 180 on their entire military strategy. Those big, bold offensive campaigns were out. A massive, impenetrable defensive wall. That was in. It became an obsession.
The Ming didn't just build everywhere at once. They were strategic, almost desperate. First, they plugged the most obvious gap in the Ordos region. When the Mongol raiders just, went around and moved east, they heavily fortified the direct path to the capital, Beijing. And finally, they brought in their best generals, guys like Qi Guang, to perfect the wall's technology, turning it into a truly unified and terrifying military system.
And what the Ming built was a massive technological leap forward. Durable brick and stone finally replaced simple packed dirt. The engineering was so good it could go up and over these insane mountain ridges. The watchtowers weren't just lookouts anymore. They were miniature fortresses with living quarters, supply rooms, signal stations, and, for the very first time, cannons.
But for all of its power, the Ming Wall's military career would come to a sudden and really ironic end. This is the moment where the wall stops being a weapon and it starts becoming an idea, a symbol that would echo for centuries, but for reasons its builders never, ever intended.
Yeah, after all those centuries of construction, all those billions of bricks, the wall wasn't broken down by an invading army. It was undone by a single human decision. A Ming general trapped between a rebel army behind him and the Manchus in front of him made a choice, and he opened the gates. And just like that, the Great Wall's military purpose was over. Forever.
So under the new Manchu Qing Dynasty, the wall was again totally irrelevant, and it was just left to crumble. But as it was physically falling apart, a whole new story began. European travelers who saw its decaying majesty sent home these fantastical tales of this ancient, unbroken marvel, one so huge you could see it from the moon. Now we know that's not true, but the myth absolutely captured the world's imagination.
And by the 20th century, China itself began to reclaim the wall, but this time as a powerful national symbol. This famous line from Mao Zedong just perfectly captures that change. It reframed the wall, not as a symbol of past failure, but as a test of the modern Chinese spirit, a monument to national perseverance and strength.
Its modern journey has been a total roller coaster. It was carefully restored for tourism. Then it was attacked as a symbol of the old feudal world during the Cultural Revolution. And then it was passionately reborn through a huge national restoration campaign. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a global icon that's now battling the forces of mass tourism and time itself.
All of which leaves us with a pretty deep question. When we look at the Great Wall today, what are we really seeing? Is it the ultimate symbol of a civilization's strength and resilience? Or is it a 13,000-mile-long monument to failure? A fortress born from crisis, built at an unbelievable human cost that in the end couldn't stop the tide of history? The answer, just like the wall itself, is long, it's complicated, and it's an epic story of a nation's struggle to define itself.